Hello again, gentlemen. In my last writing video, I talked about the mental aspect behind getting yourself to your keyboard and working on your writing. As hard as that is, it's also just the height requirement to be a writer at all. Continuing to write, and to keep getting better, and to actually finish the projects you're working on, that's an entire journey of its own. That isn't to say writing is so hard that just getting started only scratches the surface of being a writer. Learning to sit down and work is a skill you need in every aspect of life. If you are having trouble being productive, you probably have similar problems with any other hobby, or working out, or cleaning the house. Sitting down to work is having discipline, which isn't exclusive to writing at all. But from now on, except in videos where I go back and talk in detail about being productive or writing more consistently, let's pretend we're awesome and discipline is no problem. We have an idea for a book or for a long-term project, and we want to start working on it. In my last video, I explained that you should always have a plan before you start writing your story. But before we can start putting any pieces together to plan the story out, we first have to ask, what is a good story idea in the first place? What's a complete story idea, for that matter? What some people might have is a concept, an idea that usually takes the form of a what-if question. What if someone discovered a dragon's egg and raised it as a pet? What if magic was real, and a wizard was a private detective? What if two people with zero compatibility had to pretend they were dating? Having a what-if question isn't enough to tell a story all by itself. It's more like a circus sign telling people to come and see your show. A what-if question is just what your show will be about. If you want there to be a story that has a start and a finish, it needs more than that. The idea needs things to interact with. A complete story idea is built on the foundation that one force, the protagonists, have to try and overcome another force that's trying to stop them. The opposing force can be anything you can imagine, but it has to be there, and the character has to do something or learn something if they want to overcome it. By adding that opposing force, you can turn these what-if questions into complete story ideas. For example, what if someone raised a dragon as a pet and the Dark Lord wanted to kill them for it? What if a wizard was a private detective and a werewolf was hunting his friends at night? What if opposite people had to pretend they were dating and one of them accidentally fell in love with the other? The opposing force doesn't have to be a person. It can be a thing or an emotion or a concept. All that matters is it has to be a roadblock that your protagonist can't overcome easily. If you have this and you feel ready to move on, we still have to plan our story before we can start writing. If you're not sure what that plan should be, here's two things you should definitely know before starting page 1. That would be your main characters, and you should have a general idea of how your story is going to go. I'll go over the story aspect first. How much detail is enough when it comes to planning out your story? The most correct answer is, it depends. If you're writing a mystery story, you definitely need to have the details of a mystery figured out before you start telling your characters to solve it. If you're writing a story with its own made-up world, like science fiction or fantasy, you want to come up with a lot of world building and lore first to make your setting feel alive and real. On the opposite side of the spectrum, if you're writing a story where the world isn't that important and it's more focused on the characters, you can get away with having less of a plan. You can let your characters react naturally to what happens to them, as long as you drive them in the right direction. So here's the most helpful answer when it comes to making a plan. Give yourself enough of a plan so that you know these 4 things. Know how the scene you're currently writing should go. Know how the first setback will happen. Know how you'll reach the climax of your story. And know what your ending will be. The last one is especially important. A bad ending can destroy an entire story, no matter how good everything else was. Game of Thrones is the perfect example of that. No one even talks about Game of Thrones anymore, because the ending dismantled everything that led up to that moment. A lot of writers, professional writers by the way, don't even know what their endings will be until they get there. I'm sure we've all watched shows or read mangas that kept on going past the point where it should have ended. Or maybe it felt like they had no idea how to end the story, so they made up some random twist that made no sense and left everybody disappointed. Just decide on an ending early, and you can spend the whole story leading up to that moment. Now, as much as I love telling people to make a plan before they write, you also shouldn't go overboard and plan everything that happens in the entire story. You'll also be better off not doing that. The best ideas are the ones that show up in your head when you weren't even expecting them. You'll also have lots of ideas while you're writing. Sometimes things happen completely by accident, and the story might go down a path you weren't planning for at first, but it ends up working perfectly. There's just no way to plan everything, and even if you do, you'll most likely come up with something better by the time you reach later parts of a story. Just do enough so that you feel confident. Our next topic, characters, is something that I could talk about for a while because characters are a deep and complex part of writing. But this is an episode about story planning, so I'll try and stay on target. Questions such as how many main characters to have, or how to design a good character, what are character arcs, they all deserve videos of their own. So how much should you know about your characters before you start? If you look online, you'll often find sheets to help you plan a new character, which asks you over 100 questions about them. You don't need to do all that. Unless you want to, I guess. All you really need to know about your main characters, besides their names, are these 4 things. The reason that character is the way they are, like their backstory, the thing the character wants most for their character arc, a real character flaw to make them relatable, and lastly, the reason why they have to exist. Because unlike us writers, our characters can rest easy knowing they have a reason for being alive. Knowing these things will make it a lot easier to write your story, and having this figured out will help even without consciously thinking about it. When you reach the end of one part of your story and think, how do I make the next part happen? Your characters will bring you your answers, because they'll have things they want to do, and that'll naturally give you ways to know what to do next. Knowing what I talked about today is when I'd say someone is well prepared to start writing their story in earnest. But I'm just one guy, and some people might be confident with less knowledge than that, and others might want to plan a lot more before they start. A point that will come up a lot in future videos is that I can only teach my way of doing things, or what I think will be helpful to know. If something works better for you and you know it, do what works best for you. Every writer rates differently. In another video, probably the next one, I'll talk about how beginnings and opening scenes work and what you should be trying to do in them. It's an important moment to show your readers what we're getting into when we start reading a new story. But if you want to start a project now, there's no reason to wait until someone says how to do it. You don't need to know everything before you let yourself start doing what you really want to do, in writing or in life. The important thing is to just start, or you'll waste your time waiting until you feel ready. By the time everything's perfect, a different version of you, one who started earlier even though it was hard and scary, might be much further along than you are now, because they didn't wait until it was easy. As always, if you have any questions or suggestions for what topics to cover in future videos, I'm always looking to hear what would be useful for others to know. Let me know in the comments and I'll see it.